All right, if it only lags a little bit, then we should be good. I'm just not going to mess with the document any more than I need to. Hey, David, thank you so much for running tech support on my very janky stream. As I said, it is 100 degrees here in Los Angeles, and so it is very difficult to do anything. It's hard to work with my computer because my computer, is warm when it starts to work. I can't cook any food because everything requires, the oven. And you can't go outside because the sun will kill you. It'll kill you. So I thought it was smart then to talk today about fire giants and more things that are nice and cool. We're going to talk about Ironslag today, folks. I am in the process of running an extremely modified Storm King's Thunder. And, so far, my players have been through 3 of the... Is it 5 or 6? I guess 6 if you count Maelstrom. 3 of the 6 giant strongholds. They are about to head towards the Forge of the Fire Giants, better known as Ironslag in this adventure. And when they do, I will need to have it ready for them. Like I say, this is an extremely modified version. Like, almost nothing is the same except for a couple of character names, and often these dungeons. Even these dungeons are pretty heavily modified from the way that they appear in the actual adventures themselves. I have a huge subplot involving Tiamat that I basically lifted out of Horde of the Dragon Queen. It's really a kit-bashed campaign at this time, plus all the character backstory stuff. There are hags, and there are, parents imprisoned in paintings, and all kinds of other craziness. But today, we're just going to read through Forge of the Fire Giants, and I'm going to make some notes about things that I like and things that I don't like. It will probably lag a little bit here and there as I mess with my document. Thank you again, David, for helping me get that figured out. But as I do that, I will try to just do as few adjustments as possible and not to talk in the process of making the adjustments. So let's first, before we go any further, let's go over what we already know about the campaign going in. As I said, anyone who is familiar with Storm King's Thunder is going to recognize a lot of these plot beats, but I have kind of moved them around and rearranged them based on player backstories and based on my own kind of narrative sensibilities. So first things first, the Fire Giants are racing to collect all the scattered pieces of the... Now, I have Vodinode written there, which is different than the word that is printed, which is Vonindod. Vonindod? The Vonindod was when I was reading it to the players, or I was like describing it to the players, I just mispronounced it. I said Vodinode because I liked the kind of like doot way that it rhymed. I still think it's an extremely weird word, but now it's Vodinode and not Vonindod, because Vonindod. I really have no clue how that's meant to be pronounced. So Vodinode is what we're going to say, even though that's not really how you would spell it if it was pronounced Vodinode. Oh well, that's what it is, and that's what we're gonna do. But the point is, they are collecting the scattered pieces of this ancient dragon-killing weapon that is worn like a suit of armor. I sort of described it to the players as like a mech suit worn by a giant. Whether that's exactly what the Vodinode is, the Vonindod, I swear that's the last time we'll do it, is in the book. I'm not sure. That was my understanding of it. I watched most of the second season of Dice Camera Action back when that was a show, and it was they kind of heavily featured Ironslag and the Fire Giants in that. So any knowledge that I have about this adventure comes from that actual play, and may again have been changed and twisted to suit Perkins's desires in the moment. But in our campaign, the Vodinode has 6 pieces. It has a helmet, a chest plate, an arm, a leg, and a leg. There might be more pieces, but that's kind of what I have been picturing, just depending on, maybe they have, it has a cape, or maybe it has a belt, or maybe it has something like that. At present, the party has 1 piece, the helmet. They don't carry it with them, but it is back kind of at their home base, their village where they're from. Zephyros, who is an ally of theirs, a cloud giant divination wizard, has two of them in his tower. He has one of the arms of the Votanode and then one of the legs of the Votanode. The arm fits inside the lower level of the tower, but the boot was so big they basically suspended it from the tower, and it's now kind of swinging there like a pendulum. And they kind of reach this realization that the tower can't really carry anything more than that and still fly. When I dove into it, I saw it like a Tarask-esque construct. That's cool, but mech suit is also awesome. Yeah, Voltron was definitely the idea. Yeah, I think making it like a kaiju suit is also cool. Or as a construct, right? That it's like, I think you just turn it on. That also makes sense. But then the fire giants in the adventure, led by, I believe, Duke Zalto is his name, are implied to have the other three pieces: the chest, one leg, and one arm. Now, the party knows about the Votanode because they have clashed with these fire giants before. Very early on, kind of very low levels. I think it was their second adventure. They went to the small town of Tribor, which is more or less presented in the book. I sort of reflavored it as being, rather than like a bunch of orcs and ogres working for fire giants, that it was a pair of fire giant like archaeologists that had tracked down one of the pieces of the Votanode, the like gauntlet of the Votanode, to Tribor, and were excavating it. And they kind of treated the humans there sort of like insects that were in their way, right? Like they wanted to kind of like safely relocate them. But this was obviously a problem for the people who lived there, and there was a big fight, and the party ended up driving them off. The point being that they were much, much weaker then than they are now. They were maybe like second or third level, and now they're ninth level. So when they did this, they did somehow manage, with the help of sort of the local militia and an NPC, managed to defeat one of the two fire giants, Oscourt, and they let the other one, Ildmane, go, who kind of swore vengeance. So Ildmane is a like fire giant archaeologist who is, bent on vengeance against the party, and she is presumably a character I would like to incorporate into the Forge. Now, in addition to this, I have two other plot hooks that are kind of surrounding this particular leg of the voyage. My initial idea as to why they go here, I don't really have them chasing after the conch shell. That will probably be put in the penultimate place, probably in the Cloud Giant one, which I guess would be next. But they are summoned to the spine of the world by an urgent message sent from Zephyros, who is a cloud giant ally of theirs, the divination wizard that I mentioned. The idea is that Zephyros, who happens to have two of the 6 pieces of the Votanode, is sort of shot down over the mountain, and as he goes down, he sends out kind of a mayday with his sending stone, warning them that the Votanode is operational. Now, he is a little bit exaggerating there because it can't possibly be operational if not all the pieces are there. But the idea was that en route, and then when the characters go to like investigate, when they're en route to the region, they uncover a couple of locations that kind of spell out the clues. They find another dig site where clearly another piece of the Votanode has been unearthed. And then a short distance away, they find a village that's been utterly destroyed, seemingly by someone testing the weapon. So I imagine it's the other arm, and I'm imagining kind of maybe it's an Iron Man thing, or maybe it's got like a flamethrower, like something that shoots out, right, of the hand. And so this fire giant has managed to use the gauntlet of the Votanode in a way to test it. How they've managed to do that, I'm not sure, because I previously have described to the players that it is inert unless it is assembled. So maybe this fire giant is a sorcerer. Maybe they have some ability to channel their own natural magic into it. You could even maybe do like a Hulk thing in Endgame where they do it, but it drains their strength, right? That their arm is all burnt and singed or something like that. But this is the idea is that whoever has it then used it to shoot down Zephyros' tower, and it crashed into the mountain, and now Zephyros is a prisoner. And then that means presumably if the giants take those 2 pieces, then they have 5 of the 6 pieces of the Votanode, right? The only thing they need is the helmet, which is back at Nightstone. And then lastly, somewhat unrelatedly, the players are also in the region searching for clues toward the monk's disappeared father. He headed in this direction following false rumors planted by another NPC, long story, that his wife and the monk's mother was seen near Thronehold, which of course is a secretive dwarven kingdom, because I have to put those in my campaigns. Thanks, David. I like those stakes too. Their friend is captured, the artifacts are in their possession. and now the party is the only thing standing between the giants and destruction of the world, or whatever, you know. They don't want the giants to get the Votanode. What's more, because we have because we have Tiamat set up as a villain, they have become convinced that the Votanode is the only way to fight her. And I really like the idea of a big kaiju battle between the Votanode and Tiamat, or if Tiamat is not unleashed, against, spoiler alert, Imrith at the end of the campaign. That could be cool. So the Dwarven Kingdom was added, Thronehold was added when the player kind of put me on the spot. After not showing any interest in his missing father for maybe a year of like in-world time, or like out-of-world time, right? Like, you know, maybe 20 sessions or something like that. He suddenly expressed interest in it and started asking around town about where his father went. His father left because an NPC gave him a false rumor to try to get him out of the picture. Long story short, the player has reason to believe that his father is dead. There was a prophecy about it. There was a prophecy about his father being dead, and when he recently died, the player died briefly before he was revivified, he saw his father in the underworld. So he has some reason to believe that his father is dead, but he wants to confirm, he wants to know what happened to his father. Point being, I did not have any ideas yet. I hadn't been really thinking about it. And so when he asked me, I was like, oh shoot, I need like a direction or a lead to send him on. And I faintly remembered, I think it's Citadel Adbar in the Forgotten Realms, or in the Fire Giants. Oh no, you know what? I think it's Gauntlgrim, the like R.A. Salvatore like Moria 2 location, because Mithril Hall wasn't enough of a Moria. We needed even more Moria. So I think it's Gauntlgrim that's important here. Anyway, I knew there was a dwarven thing that was tangentially related to Ironslag, and so I quickly invented pulling a name out of Eberron, I think, for a secret dwarven kingdom that she was supposedly sent towards. This is a false rumor. She wasn't sent there, or he was sent in that direction. The wife isn't there. The thinking was that if Thronehold is like a true secret, like Khazad-dûm style, that like no. Basically go look for her in a place that no one can find to get him out of the way. The point being that there's a dwarven kingdom in this area. They've not really interacted with any dwarves yet. The only thing we know about Thronehold is that it is secretive and only dwarves can find it. Only dwarves of the kingdom can find it. And so obviously, inevitably, we're going to end up dealing with some dwarves and some dwarven politics if they kind of go looking for his father. So his father presumably did go there. How his father died, that I have no idea. So all of that out of the way, that's what we know about the campaign so far. This is the reason they're headed to Ironslag, and we're just going to go through the adventure and kind of get a sense of what's there, what we like, what we don't. David says that when he skimmed through, he liked what he saw, minus the Yak Folk stuff. Yeah, I remember the Yak Folk being a little weird. I will probably cut them. I've been doing a kind of a recurring motif that these giants have sort of dominated or suborned human, quote-unquote, barbarian tribes. That they were just kind of killing indiscriminately for a couple of adventures before they realized that the fighter in the group, who is an orphan, is actually descended from one of these tribes. So now they're kind of like, ooh, maybe we shouldn't just be slaughtering them like they're orcs or whatever, right? They're just like mindless monsters in Lord of the Rings. Like, maybe these are people with a culture. So I might do a similar thing and replace the Yak Folk with another human, quote-unquote, barbarian group. Great, but let's see how they do. I'm going to scroll, so this is going to lag me out for just a second. But then once I get it figured out, I'll give it a beat, and then we'll get reading. Okay. Drank all my water because it's super hot. I'll probably get more in a little bit, but let's see. So, Zalto's followers are spread throughout the north, searching for pieces of an adamantine colossus called the Votanode. The fire giant Duke has also struck an alliance with the Drow. Oh god, that's right, the Drow of House Zolaran. He promises to help them destroy their enemies if the Drow help him steal Megara, the fire primordial trapped within the underground dwarven city of Gauntlgrim. Yeah, I was right, it is Gauntlgrim. House Zolaran once held Gauntlgrim, but King Brunor Battlehammer and his dwarves recently drove out the Dark Elves. They know its layout well, however. Duke Zalto has given the Drow an iron flask, in which to trap Megara. While the Drow creep back into Gauntlgrim to perpetrate this great theft, Zalto readies his family's ancestral forge for the arrival of Megara and the Votanode fragments. Okay. I'm not super interested in the Drow, because it feels like an extra thing with Gauntlgrim and all that. I do like the idea of the Fire Primordial, though, because I've talked about how the Voda node needs to be assembled before it can be used. So maybe, not only does it need to be assembled, but it also needs to be powered up. I remember the Megara being a thing. Megara being a thing in Dice Camera Action. I like the idea of incorporating that. In this part of their mission, the characters journey to Ironslag, Zalto's fortress in the icy mountains north of the Silver Marches. Sure. Duke Zalto and his fire giants unlocked and reclaimed the forge several months ago. Since then, the fire giants have captured slaves, put them to work in the forges. The dwarves of Citadel Adbar and Citadel Felbar are aware that the fire giants have returned to Ironslag. However, the dwarves are still recovering from the War of the Silver Marches and aren't prepared to mount an attack on the giant fortress. Yeah, that seems pretty easy to slot into, right? You just say that it's Thronehold that is aware of it, and they're, have some cultural reason maybe why they don't want to go to war there. Okay. Who visit Ironslag must first contend not only with the fire giant Duke, his family, and his most loyal followers, but also the village of sinister yak folk. Yikes! If the characters obtain Zalto's conch of teleportation, blah blah blah. Don't care about that. Fire giants. I know how to play fire giants. So I'm gonna add that change in here. The question we need to answer is how does the Iron Flask get to Duke Zalto if we're not going to do the Drow? Okay, so there might be some lag here as I do some typing. I apologize. Ironslag changes. Zalto. Wow, it's like my own document is lagging. David says, yeah, there's also this whole plot with Megara, a fire elemental, that is a little odd. I kind of think that the idea of it's cool. Just got to make it work for me. Instead of working with the Drow, Duke Zalto has maybe a spy or an ally inside Thronehold who captures Megara and seals it inside an iron flask. That's cool. Okay. Great. We're going to scroll down again. Sorry if there's lag. Warmonger. Fire giants love to fight on a large scale, and Duke Zalto is one of the greatest warmongers of his age. For years, hacking Hecaton out of the picture, set in plot motion to wage war on dragonkind, sure, for the glory of Surtur and the divine favor of Anam, the Allfather. I don't understand why it's Anam. I think that's very dumb. I call him Ymir, the Allfather. Like, if you're going to do Thrym and Surtur, you might as well just do Ymir. It begins with the reconstruction of the Voda node, a dragon-slaying colossus built by his ancient ancestors. Duke Zalto has a nagging wife. Cool. Brimskarda is a cool name, though. I think the fire giant names are pretty solid. And two ill-tempered children, a belligerent daughter named Cinderhild. That's cool. And a sadistic son named Zaltember. Those are great. Brimskarda, Cinderhild, and Zaltember. Love that. I like the idea of Zalto having a family. I don't love the nagging wife. I wonder if we change that. The children distract him from his enterprise while his wife chastises him for not acting quickly enough. Ugh. Brimskarda fears that one of the other giant lords will win the gods' favor first. Zalto is feeling the pressure, given that his success hinges on his ability to reignite Ironslag's adamantine forge, and his minion's ability to retrieve all the missing fragments of the Voda node. Unfortunately for Zalto, these are the least of his problems. The arrogant fire giant Duke has failed to account for the interference of puny adventurers and a certain ancient red dragon. Interesting. Okay. So Zalaran Alliance is about the Drow, built on the promise that once he climbs to the top of the Ordning, he will use his forge and his newfound might to help House Zalaran destroy its enemies, starting with the dwarves who cast the Drow out of Gauntlgrim. Okay. Maybe it's like a dwarven coup. For their part, the Drow are more interested in supporting Zalto's plan to wage war on dragonkind. By the time the characters begin their journey to Ironslag, the Drow have already managed to infiltrate Gauntlgrim. If the Drow capture Megara and deliver the Iron Flask to Ironslag, the characters might encounter them in the Fire Giant Fortress. Unless the characters defeat Duke Zalto or otherwise prevent the Iron Flask from falling into his possession, he traps Megara in the Adamantine Forge. The fire generated by Megara is sufficiently hot for Zalto and his fire giants to begin reforging the Voda node. So here, it's about reforging it as opposed to activating it. I think in my case, it's about activating it. So I'm going to type that out. It might be a minute, just a second. Zalto seeks to empower the Voda node. See, now they're in my head. With Megara. Instead of reforging it, does he work with a discontented dwarven, like, noble family? Someone inside Thronehold who opposes the current regime. Yeah, okay, cool. Yak folk neighbors. Zalto has come to terms with the Yak folk that live on the mountains above Ironslag. These malevolent creatures watch over the topmost entrance to the giant's fortress and also tend crops for the giants. In exchange, the giants leave them alone. So yeah, I mean, I think you just replace these with humans, right? Two kinds of Yak folk, warriors and priests. Also present in the village are a number of slaves. Great. Humanoid prisoners that the Yak folk use for manual labor. No thanks. They feign benevolence, offering food and shelter to wayward visitors, only to shed their guise to friendly hosts when their guests are more vulnerable. While their visitors sleep, the Yak folk beat them unconscious, strip off their gear and weapons, and consign them to a life of slavery. Cool. Deprived of food and warmth, slaves rarely survive more than a week. To untrained eyes, the Yak folk village looks like a peaceful, idyllic hideaway perched atop a mountain cliff with granite walls to keep the howling wind at bay. The dwarves of Citadel Adbar know better than to trust the Yak folk, and they occasionally send patrols north to spy on the village. One of those patrols was ambushed by Yak folk, and the survivors were taken prisoner. I don't hate that. If, like, the dwarves from... Oh, someone's texting me. If the dwarves from... boy, I can't talk. If the dwarves from Thronehold, like, head up there, right, and there's, like, if the barbarians have captured a patrol of dwarves, maybe who, like, came seeking the flask. You could also do a thing where, like, maybe they... They managed to possess the... Oh, interesting. I need to keep reading. Well, one of these patrols was ambushed by Yak folk and the survivors taken prisoner. The Yak folk used their magic to possess the bodies of the dwarven captives, and in the guise of these dwarves, Yak folk spies have infiltrated Citadel Adbar. These agents do everything in their power to discourage the dwarves from attacking Ironslag, mostly by assuring the Citadel's leaders that the Yak folk pose no immediate threat. They also stand ready to assassinate Adbar's ruler, King Harnoth, if he tries to mount an attack on them. Okay. So they have some kind of weird astral projection power thing. I don't hate the idea of the barbarians having a bunch of dwarven prisoners. I think that's interesting. But this, like, possessing their body thing, like, I think if you're gonna say that instead of drow, they're like dwarven traitors, right? They're like enemies inside. You don't need them to be possessed. But I do think there's something interesting about a patrol going missing, and maybe the, like, Yak folk, the barbarians, you know, writing letters or speaking with the dwarven faction that's actually on the side of Ironslag. Something like that I think is interesting. Let me jot that down. A barbarian tribe dwells outside Ironslag, replacing the Yak folk. They recently captured a dwarven patrol and don't know what to do with them. They have sent frantic messages to the dwarven nobles asking what to do with them. If they kill the patrol, it might bring more. If they let them go, the dwarves will report about Ironslag. There's also Zephyros to consider here, too. Okay, so there's like a Yak Folk roster with a bunch of different stuff. Boy, I hate how many times kills their slaves is written here. Yikes. Look at this. When an alarm sounds, the Yak Folk kill their slaves and then head down towards Area 8. When an alarm sounds, the Yak Folk kills its slaves. When an alarm sounds, the Yak Folk kills its slaves. What the fuck? Here's another one. The Yak Folk, if they hear the sound of a gong, the Yak Folk kills the slaves. Like, they just... First of all, what sense does that make? Secondly, like, from a narrative perspective, imagine that. Okay, you know they have slaves. Apparently we're doing slaves now. But let's say you're going to do that, right? If an alarm goes off, then, like, in 4 different rooms of the village, these Yak Folk just kill the slaves without any chance for the party to do anything, and then just go to investigate. They don't even know what's going on. They just hear an alarm and think, okay, what? That's bananas. If there's no chance of freeing them? Because, like, you know the party's going to trip the alarm. Of course they are. Huh, Jesus. Nope. Not doing that shit. My God. Chief Karthikaya is a cool name. Ugh. I mean, I like the idea of the rosters, and I like the notion, like, this. I think this is important for a lot of, like, dungeons and, like, structures that are garrisoned, is that they need to feel responsive to what the party does. But this shit, no thank you. Okay. I'm going to scroll a little bit more. We're going to read some more. All right, Ironslag. North of the Silver Marches is a range of towering snow-covered mountains known as the Ice Spires. The great dungeon forge of Ironslag is under the one known to dwarves of the Silver Marches as Mount Hammerhast. Hammerhast is a fucking cool name. Hammer of Ashes, that's cool. Carved into the base of the 500-foot high mountainside cliff is a pair of 50-foot tall adamantine doors. Airtight valves sealed by ancient magic. That's cool. Adventurers hoping to gain access to the forge must figure out a way through these doors or find an alternate route. One such route is a staircase carved into the mountainside, see Area 1. Another involves the use of flying mounts or an airship. Okay. I'm not super concerned with how they get there physically. That's kind of up to them. Hey, what's up, Nuker Wolf? Yeah, I mean, like, the notion of, like, you know, holding the prison, again, I don't like slaves, but, like, if you're going to replace some of these dwarven prisoners, the notion of, like, yeah, if they're defeated and they retreat, they hold a dwarven prisoner hostage and say, you know, let us go, we killed them. Like, I'm not saying don't use the prisoners as a plot device, but this notion of, like, just kill the slave, like, what a waste. And also just, like, again, narratively very cruel, because then the party can't do anything. They can't rescue these captives, right? They just, nope, you were too late. Like, you set off the alarm, and now dozens of people are dead because you did that. Like, ugh, who writes that? It's a WotC special. Like, one section of Candlekeep having babies nearly be murdered if the party doesn't kill them in 3 rounds. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. No, thank you. That's weird. And Candlekeep, that's especially strange to find that in Candlekeep because, like, they hired people. Like, that's all subcontract for those adventures. Crazy. There is apparently a chimera. The chimera that lives on the mountain poses a threat to characters who travel by air. If the chimera is home when the party first arrives, it might notice the approaching airship or flying mounts and attack. The chimera is particularly fond of hippogriff flesh if it sees one or more hippogriffs approaching the mountain. That's interesting. So Zephyros, their Cloud Giant ally, has a squad of like 4 griffins. Maybe there's something about if the tower crashes, like definitely the crashed tower needs to be a thing, you know? Like, where did it go down? But the giants would have, like, raided it, essentially. So maybe they find the, like, broken remnants of the tower. Yeah, that's interesting. If they find the, like, broken half of the tower, like, embedded in the cliffside or something like that, that's cool. But my point was that, like, if the tower goes down, the party has ridden the griffins a couple of times. Do the griffins, like, try to find them, or, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, Because then you could do kind of a fun like a fun thing where the Griffins find the party like while they're still en route to Ironslag, and like, okay, cool, let's ride these Griffins, and we go flying there, and then it's like, oh man, I'm glad we didn't have to walk because of the staircase, and then as they're flying, they get attacked by the Chimera. I kind of think that's cool. Okay, so en route to the. Sorry, I'm gonna type. This is gonna lag me out a little bit. Zephyros's. I should probably scroll this up, I suppose. One moment, let me do that. It still says I'm dropping a lot of frames. Okay. Drops back down again. Gripply eggs are the hostages. Oof. Yeah, would the party have access to hippogriffs if it brings it up as bait? Yeah, they wouldn't be hippogriffs, but they're griffins canonically, so I think that actually makes tons of sense. I think there must be a hippogriffs thing that they can get in this adventure. I don't know. Okay, great. Let's see. Oh, then I wanted to have the tower crash. Okay, lots of flying stuff, zones and denizens. Here we go. Ironslag has two distinct zones. The Yak Folk village on the mountainside and the Fire Giant Forge beneath it. Zones are described below in more detail. Ironslag general features, rosters. During the day, some of the Yak Folk are overseeing slaves at work in the mill. Cool. The barns and the crop fields. Great. At night, the slaves are locked in their cages, and the Yak Folk... God. I get the slaves. So a bunch of monsters, salamanders, fire giants, orcs, fire giants, ogres, Zaltember. Okay, I was thinking Zaltember, the young, like the son, might be a good candidate for the one who like used the arm. But maybe that's a better use of Ildmane. That's kind of interesting. If she found it and then started to use it, and she's gone kind of mad with vengeance, I think that's maybe stronger. Ildmane is the one. Unearthed the arm and now refuses to part with it. Duke Zalto doesn't know how to deal with her. That like she brought it back and she now has it and is sort of like almost too powerful to be dealt with, right? Because she has the arm of the Votanode. Kind of like the Infinity Gauntlet or whatever, right? And he's like, what do I do? Like, she won't give it up. She demands to be the one who wears the Votanode to go and crush Nightstone. And he doesn't want her to have it. He wants to be the one who uses it, obviously, because he's the warlord, but, like, he can't really get it away from her. So I like the idea that, like, they're circling around her, plotting, how do we get this away from Ildmane? Yeah, that's cool. Duke Zalto, Cinderhild, Brimskarda, Fire Giant, okay. Let's read the Yak Folk village. Thick gray clouds and howling wind make it easy for adventurers to approach the Yak Folk village unseen and unheard. The doors of the village are barred from within. Okay, so they can sneak up, that's cool. They don't post guards and rarely leave their huts, a little weird. The only Yak Folk that has a chance of spotting adventurers who invade the village by flying over the walls is the one watching over the slaves in Area 7. Characters who enter the village within sight of this Yak Folk must succeed on a DC 12 dexterity stealth check to avoid being spotted immediately. Okay, warns the chief. The Yakfo chief has a large bronze gong in his hut. One of them strikes it is loud enough to be heard through the village, prompting the other Yakfolk to come running. The Yakfolk were vile in their pragmatism. Before setting out to confront invaders, they murder their slaves to prevent them from being freed or turned against them. Jesus. To conquer the village, the adventurers must defeat all adult Yakfolk that live there. Great. Great. Hey, what's up, Hunter? How you doing? Yeah, we're just reading about how much WotC loves slaves. Very poorly timed, this turns out. The adventurers approach the village in a non-threatening manner. Chief Karthakaya welcomes them with open arms and plays the part of a benevolent host, offering them fresh bread, cheese, jugs of... Like, I like this idea of them being invited in, but... Again, because I've been playing with this idea that these, like, quote-unquote barbarian tribes that they encounter are more often than not just as civilized as, you know, the people who live, the farming people who live in the villages, right? Like, they've encountered 3 different tribes so far, kind of inspired by the Uthgar barbarians. The blue bears, the red tigers, and the white whales. It's almost getting to the point where they're like Legends of the Hidden Temple teams, right? The green iguanas. The purple parakeets. So I like the idea of, like, and they just recently, like, discovering that the fighter is, like, a barbarian, right? That she was an orphan and that her village was destroyed by stone giants. And so but she was then raised among civilized people, right? But she was actually a barbarian, and her mother, who's still alive, is still a barbarian. That, like, they are grappling now with this idea that they can't just indiscriminately murder these people because they live in the woods, right? So I like that. I like the idea of playing with that, and we've not done a barbarian tribe that has, like, welcomed them. They've been very hostile initially. So the notion of them getting invited inside and then maybe taken prisoner, similar to the dwarves, that, like, dwarven patrols came up this way too, right? And then they were captured. So the notion is that this is how this group of barbarians handles this problem. I mean, maybe they're pacifists, right? Maybe the conceit is that they are sort of suborned to the fire giants and they have to make them food and whatever, right? They have like have to pay tribute to the fire giants, but these particular ones don't fight. They don't have warriors, you know? And so when the dwarves come and start asking questions about the fire giants, they don't know what to do, and so they capture them or they put them to sleep or whatever and then take them prisoner. And now they're like, we have all these dwarven prisoners, what do we do? And then they try to do the same thing to the party when the party comes, and it's more out of a desperation, right? That these people could be allies against the fire giants if they're properly persuaded. Because I think that's the thing we've been missing, is that every time they encounter the barbarians have been on kind of a war footing, where here it's like they might actually be able to help us if we can kind of get over our own assumptions about who they are. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So when the characters, sorry, this is gonna, me typing is gonna slow it down for a second. Here. I write they fall unconscious because, like, they're probably not gonna fall unconscious. Like, most likely somebody will succeed or whatever, right? Like, and then it'll be more like, what are you trying to do? And they're gonna like, ah, shoot, right? Although the idea that they poisoned dwarves is kind of funny. Maybe it's like a particular sort of poison that's especially effective against dwarves. Let's see. The barbarians are suborned. I'll just say subordinate. Now I can't spell. Subordinate to the fire giants against their will. It's like a bug's life, right? Like they have to produce a certain amount of food for them, but don't know what to do. But are peaceful. Don't want to harm either the dwarves or the adventurers. Okay. The party's belongings are piled in the chief's hut, and the prisoners set to work harvesting crops. I think they're put to work, and they're just like held. The Yak folk converge on the chief's hut. Karthakai and his wives attack conscious party members, beat the characters unconscious of their possessions, and enslave them. Great. This is I forgot about that game show. It's a great game show. This is Storm King's Thunder. So I'm running a group, a very, very, very heavily modified version of it for some kids. And I'm looking at the Fire Giant dungeon that's in here right now. And like, I've seen people play it before and it looked cool. I did not realize that there was this much slavery in it. So that's gotta go. But that's what we're working on right now. We're also fighting the heat, as I'm sure you, Hunter, who also lives in LA, know it is brutally hot. And so my computer is right on the verge of overheating, and I'm trying to like play it safe and not go too far. So if you see any lag, that is definitely why. But I'm just mainly reading through and figuring out what I want to change, what I want to keep, that kind of stuff. Great, let's go to the Fire Giant's Forge. Just one moment. Okay. The Fire Giant's Forge is a sprawling 2-level dungeon complex located beneath the Yak Folk village and the mines. Raw iron ore from the mines are brought by cart to Area 17 and loaded into iron buckets hanging from a carousel-like apparatus called the bucket chain. That's cool. Yeah, I remember this is what was cool, is that it was tons of like automation stuff, right? There's like gantries and conveyor belts and, you know, like grinders and all this fun stuff to play with, which is what I liked about the dungeon. I wasn't such a big fan of the slave wheel in Area 20 that moves clockwise to the upper level of the fortress, transporting the iron ore to the dressing mill to be broken up. Iron ore is then loaded into buckets and transported to the foundry, where ogres on the gantries use long hooked poles to tip the buckets, causing the ore to fall into the smelters below. Enormous bellows raise the temperature inside the smelters, melting the iron. The molten iron spills through into a huge stone trough, where it is channeled into molds and used to forge giant-sized swords and armor. It's just cool, right? It's very Isengard. I really like that vibe. I can hear Howard Shore's "banana" right now. The iron buckets are spaced 10 feet apart. Each one is 10 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 6 feet deep. Bucket can hold one creature, blah, 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 blah. While the slave wheel is turning, although the adamantine forge isn't lit, the main foundry is operational, and the racket from the weapon forges and the slowly revolving bucket chain echoes throughout the complex. The noise is so loud that activity in one area usually doesn't draw the attention of creatures in adjacent areas. That's cool, making it possible for adventurers to eliminate forces a few at a time. I like when they kind of create a reason why, you know, one failed stealth check doesn't immediately bring down the entire place on you, and it makes a lot of narrative sense here that it's this loud factory that's like just constantly rattling and making all this noise. That's cool. I like the idea of playing with that too. If the party can't talk to each other, they're like, "What are you doing?" Right? They have to like shout over the noise. If the wheel stops turning, the bucket chain stops. That's a sign to the Fire Giant something is amiss. Unless the buckets start moving again, all adult Fire Giants that haven't been killed or incapacitated head towards the slave wheel god to find out what the problem is, unless the Ironslag roster table says otherwise. Okay, so it's like kind of built around this conveyor belt system with these buckets. I'm gonna scroll really quick. Oh, we got a map coming up. Check to see if reinforcements arrive once during the day and once at night by rolling D100 and consulting the Ironslag reinforcements table. If the reinforcements are indicated, the Fire Giant leading them utters a command phrase in the giant tongue that unlocks and opens the adamantine doors to the Vodinode Assembly Hall. These reinforcements remain in the Assembly Hall until Duke Zolto commands them to go elsewhere. Has been attacked. Searching the complex for intruders. Okay, so it seems like it's just a Fire Giant with some hobgoblins. Huh. So they have these rods of the Vodinode that I think, because it's a construct in the book, don't really make sense, because in my version it's like a suit of armor that you wear, right? It's like a mech suit. Yeah, dude. Hunter says his video game studio is on fire. Yeah, I believe it. Nuker Wolf brings up an excellent point about poison. D&D needs to work on how poison works, seeing as the real world has so much variety, and 99% of the time poison does little to nothing, and I completely agree, right? Like, if you treat it like normal poison damage, then it does nothing. I think my kind of fix for this in my games is that poison should deal ability damage, right? If it gets into your system, you know, and it's like running around. Like, I'm not saying that like a snake can't have like poison damage as a type, but if you like ingest a poison, right, then I think it should go right into your system as opposed to it being like damage, right? Because that has to get through your flesh. It's already inside you. So generally, when I do poisons, it's like, you know, it might be strength or dex or wisdom or whatever, but I really like con poison is the gnarly one. I used that recently to try to poison a dwarf character because I was like, I gotta have this have some effect. Like, it has to reasonably be expected to kill someone, right? So it was con damage. That's kind of my fix. It's not perfect, but it's what I've used in the past to heighten the spookiness of a poison. Let's look at this map. Oh, I love how vertical it is. That's really cool. Look at that. So you've got like the Yak Folk village like up near the top, right? Here, let me scroll all the way down. Or most of the way, I should say. And then you've got like these like even like the layers of crops are really cool. They go up into the mountain. Wow. And then but then it drops, right? You see that like vertical drop 500 feet down to the base. And you've got all these like different levels, but then eventually like the mines, right, that go off the different sides, and then eventually comes down into the forge itself at the base. So are the doors at the base, or are the doors up at the top? I always thought the doors were up at the top. Maybe there's two pairs. Here's the upper level of Ironslag. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Yeah, very cool. All the gantries and stuff. Oh, fuck. The squares are only 10 feet. The Frost Giant map, all the squares were 20 feet, and it just, Roll20 just exploded. Like, it just couldn't handle how big those maps were. Ugh. Okay, cool. I'm gonna scroll down again. We've got some general features. Before we do general features, I'm gonna grab some water. I don't know if we're gonna get through all of Ironslag today. It's a big dungeon. I'll be back in like 30 seconds with some water. 1 second. Yo, I'm back. Okay. Let's see. Ironslag general features. A set of enormous, airtight, magically locked stone doors seal the Ironslag main vault. Adventurers hoping to breach the fortress are more likely to succeed by climbing a 500-foot-high staircase carved into the cliffs and either attacking or infiltrating the yak. So I see. So it's like the doors are down at the bottom, right? But there is a way up through the village. Okay. The Yakfuk village is built on the mountainside, enclosed by 20-foot-high walls of mortared stone. They require a DC 15 strength check to climb. Double doors made of thick iron-bound oak are set into the walls. They're barred, shut, too strong to be broken down. Buildings are crude, single-story huts, thatched roofs, blah, 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 smooth clay. Yak folk imprison their slaves in iron cage, blah, 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 blah. Carries the key that opens all cages. Ceilings. The mines have a 20-foot-high ceiling, 30-foot-high ceiling. Unless otherwise noted, Ironslag's doors are 20 feet tall, made of riveted iron plates. Huge giant has no trouble opening these doors. Smaller creature can attempt to open a door, provided the creature or some other helpful creature can reach the door's handle and unlatch it. While the handle is unlatched, the creature must use an action to push or pull on the heavy door, opening it with a successful DC 12 strength check. Failed check doesn't open. Ironslag's fireplaces are hewn out of the rock and of basalt mantelpiece, ornately carved with images of hellhounds and fire elementals. That's pretty fucking cool. These openings are wide and tall enough for a party of adventurers to stand in. The fire in each one burns constantly, fed by natural gas that spews from yeah, okay, I know how a fireplace works. Gantry's upper level of Ironslag features iron walkways that are bolted to the walls and stabilized with taut chains, bolted to the ceiling. This is just kind of like the physicality stuff. The mines are unlit. Size for fire giants. Portcullises, mechanical winches, they must be lifted manually. Use an action to portcullis. Any other creature must need a DC 22 strength athletics check. Okay. We do have somebody with strength 20 in the party and somebody with like strength 22 or something like that because they have a hill giant belt of strength. So I could see the monk doing that. Okay, let's get into this actual location. Yeah, I've heard Hunter says like I got to get on Foundry, and I have definitely heard that this is true. My friend Vaughn uses Foundry and swears by it. But my issue with Foundry is less that, from what I've seen of it, it does look better. Definitely looks better. But the problem is you got to teach that, right? That, like, I have taught all of my kids Roll20, and now the difficulty is, like, how do you teach them another program? So I would have to learn Foundry, and then I would have to teach it to my kids. I look at it, and I'm envious, but I'm kind of stuck grandfathered into Roll20 at the moment. If I get, like, another group of kids, I think I could consider bringing them, or another group of players, I should say. They don't have to be kids, but they tend to be kids. I could consider bringing them into Foundry, but at the moment, like, I'd have to learn the whole thing. So you're 100% correct, Hunter. I just haven't had a chance to learn the new system. Okay. Thousands of years. It's 12,000 steps, which is a cool name and a bad recovery program. I'm just inhaling this water. Thousands of years after Ironslag was abandoned, a clan of yak folk used humanoid slaves to carve a staircase. What? Why? God damn it. The slaves could have been built any other way. Clans of dwarves eager to plunder the mines made numerous failed attempts to conquer the yak folk village before concluding the Ironslag spoils weren't worth the effort. The rough-hewn steps, all 12,000 of them, were proportioned for medium humanoids and ascend a total of 500 feet. Normal horses and ponies are reticent to climb the staircase. Coaxing such a creature to climb the stairs requires a DC 15 Wisdom Animal Handling check. Magically summoned mounts can be made to climb the stairs without an ability check. Mules, blah, blah, blah. There's a chimera, okay. After climbing 350 feet, the staircase is interrupted by a naturally formed 50-foot wide, 50-foot deep chamber that a chimera has made into a lair. The ledge that leads across this area is covered with the bones of the chimera's kills. Beasts mostly with a few orc and dwarf bones. The staircase resumes on the opposite side of the ledge. No yak folk bones? The yak folk are right there. What is it eating orcs for? Climbing another 150 feet to area 2. In the back of its lair, the chimera has a nest of bones. There's some treasure. So I always like to put like 4 magic items specifically across the adventure. So I wonder if the Chimera lair is a good place to put a magic item. Magic item location. It's a good one for like an item that it won't fit with the theme of the fire giants, right? Because it could have just been on somebody else that the Chimera attacked and killed. Okay. Two, bridge. A cleft in the mountainside splits the Yakfolk village in two. A wooden bridge spanned the gap until it rotted away. The Yakfolk later built a safe bridge out of ropes and planks, lashed to 4 sturdy posts. Slaves of the Yakfolk. Most of the slaves in the Yakfolk village aren't given identities. Gee. You can assign names and genders to them as needed. Slaves of the Yakfolk who were set free to try to return. Who cares? Okay. Karthikaya, he has 2 wives because polygamy is evil. Giant water wheel turns the millstone, raises and lowers an elevator. Many more slaves have been put to work in the mines. Oh, God. Okay. 3, mill. An enormous wooden water wheel is attached to an iron axle and mounted above a swift-flowing river that spills down the mountainside. That's cool. The current turns the wheel. It not only powers the elevator in Area 9, but also turns a large millstone located inside a hut next to the wheel, which has a beaded curtain entrance to the south wall. Grain harvested from Area 7 is brought in here and made into flour. The grinding of the millstone, the cranking of the water wheel, and the rush of the water pouring down the mountainside drown out most other noises in the area. During the day, 2 Yakfolk warriors are here, quietly overseeing a pair of shield dwarf slaves who shovel flour into burlap sacks, which are then taken to the bread ovens in Area 5.
They sit on stools and either smoke pipes or sew blankets to pass the time as they watch the dwarves work. I love the idea of sewing blankets while you're watching somebody. Just work, then. Ugh. Mill isn't occupied. Okay, there's a mill. The characters can try to reach Area 9 by climbing through openings in the frame of the water wheel and crawling along its iron axle. This is a dangerous act, and getting from one side to the other requires a successful DC 15 Athletics or Dexterity Acrobatics check. Fails it, doesn't make it across, and must make a DC 10 Dex save. On a failed save, the character is swept down the river and tumbles down the mountainside, taking 20d6 bludgeoning damage. Yikes. I think I have to look at the map to understand the spatial awareness of this, but okay. Sometimes D&D does this where they get really fixated on an outside possibility, and then they have to express every possible mechanical outcome if they do something. It's like, who's gonna think to do this? Okay, we'll stop the force, put some strain on it each turn, breaking apart and tumbling down the waterfall. If that happens, the millstone and the elevator cease to function. Any creature on the wheel, when it breaks, is swept over the cliff at the wreckage, blah, blah, blah. The breaking of the wheel puts the Yak Folk village on alert. Zalto orders one of the fire giants in Area 34 to go to Area 9. Find out, okay, so if they break the elevator, they send a fire giant. Okay. Hey, what's up, Grant? Thanks for coming. Nuker Wolf says, I feel the same about any digital tabletop. I just don't have the time to learn, and the DM really needs to be the one controlling the maps. Yeah, I mean, Roll20 was definitely a learning curve for me. I have no doubt I could learn Foundry, and I bet it would be cool. It looks better, right? I just haven't been able to get my actual tasks done, much less get ahead and do that. So Hunter is exactly right. It would be much better, and it seems like it's better, but I'm lazy. The village has 3 barns. Each contains a large chicken coop, as well as muddy stalls that hold boars and yaks. The boars devour food waste and provide meat. Yaks provide wool. During the day, yak folk warriors inside each barn, overseeing 2 human, say it with me, 2 human slaves. As they gather eggs, feed the animals, and clean up the stalls. The boars are cool. Well, the yak folk kills the slaves. God. I kind of want to just skip this whole section. We only have an hour left. I'm going to jump ahead to the fire giants. I am bored of this. Hey, what's up, Brent? As thoughts on adding a magic item versus making an item already listed be magical. Example, that music box or obsidian dagger already have some minor description, so adding magical effect lets you do less work. That's a great idea. I think oftentimes I will look more at what I tend to design my own items anyway, so that's actually a really great way to do it, but I will often look at what I think my players either want or are likely to use. Right? Like, a music box is a really cool item, but I don't know that my 4 players are the type to think of it as a cool item. It has to kind of pass a certain 12-year-old boy sniff test of seeming cool for them to be interested in it. So oftentimes it's more about, okay, what do I think Charlie would be into? Charlie's the character's name. What do I think Charlie would be into? Or what do I think Lothar needs, right? Like, Lothar has expressed a desire to be able to speak more languages. So, okay, maybe this obsidian dagger lets him speak 3 languages of his choice. But, again, you want to try to rope it in with the same concept. So that's a great idea, Brent. But it's a matter of what is my party going to take an interest in? Because what happens a lot of time with this group anyway, with the fact that Charlie would like that. Yeah, exactly, Brent. A lot of times what happens is that they will come across a magic item that they aren't into. Like, I will put 4 magic items in the adventure, and they know there's going to be 4 magic items, right? Like, I've kind of come into the meta and said, hey, there's going to conveniently be 4 magic items in each one of these dungeons. Because I have found magic items are the kind of thing that they will absolutely go to war with each other about, right? Or over, like, who gets what. And specifically, if there are more items than there are people, then you get into a problem. But what they will sometimes do is they will sometimes either miss an item, they just don't find it, or nobody wants it. So it's like an item that I had maybe specifically thought, oh, the wizard would be into this, but then they're not. And so now you have 3 items that everybody wants and 1 item that nobody wants. So I have to be very particular in what I design for kids. Whereas I think an adult would just like take it, even if it wasn't something super useful to them. They would have the social grace to be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll have the dagger. It's maybe not necessarily what I want, but that's okay, right? The kids, no, they have none of that. They have no social sense in that way. So you have to really make sure all 4 of the items are sick. And not that I don't think a music box or obsidian dagger could be cool, but it has to also work with who the characters are and what they can already do. And at 9th level, they have a fair amount of items. Great question, though, Brent. Thanks for bringing it up. It's an interesting idea. I usually divorce the magic item design from the dungeon like reflavor so much that I forget what's actually listed there. Let me scroll ahead. I'm going to get to Ironslag because I find the Yakfolk village to be depressing to read and dumb and poorly done. So I'm just going to swoop ahead really quick, and then we will get to Ironslag. We still got about an hour, so hopefully we can make some good progress there. Okay, I'm going to read here an elevator shaft because I think this might be relevant. 20-foot tall iron doors on the mountainside northeast of Area 8 swing open to reveal a rough-hewn passageway blocked by an iron portcullis. From the room beyond comes the sound of rushing water from the nearby river. The passage leads to a cold, dark, and vast chamber with a 50-foot high ceiling and an 80-foot diameter, 500-foot deep shaft in the middle of the floor. An iron rig is bolted into the pit's circular rim. Suspended from this rig by iron chains is a 60-foot diameter circular platform made from oak beams held together by iron bands and rivets. An oak... I mean, I guess that makes it lighter, but it feels like descending into a volcano is probably not... great to have a wooden platform. Although I actually don't think it's a volcano. I think it's just like a forge, because if it was a volcano, it wouldn't need Megara, the fire primordial. The platform ascends and descends the shaft constantly, powered by a wooden water wheel located. So it's constantly moving. I see. So that's their whole thing about stopping it, right? It's not like someone summons the elevator or someone has to work it. It's the water wheel that makes it move. Makes a programmed series of 15 stops on its way up and down the shaft, each delay lasting 30 seconds. One of the stops is here at the top of the shaft. The platform descends. It stops at 12 mine levels and also pauses at the upper level of Ironslag and the lower level. Accounting for all the stops, it takes the elevator platform 15 minutes to move from the top of the shaft to the bottom, or vice versa. Between stops, it moves at a constant speed. Bolted to the northeast wall of the room is a rectangular metal plate with a 3-foot iron lever protruding from it. Pulling it down triggers a mechanism in the elevator suspension rig that disengages the elevator from the water wheel axle, which immediately causes the elevator platform to stop. Moving the lever back up reconnects the elevator to the axle, causing the platform to move again. It's just like, what do we need the mill for? Can't it just be an elevator that you can start and stop? Like, who really cares about the mechanisms? This just seems like a lot of text for, like, really over-explaining how the water wheel works. I don't care. Like, this is irrelevant to me. Let's keep scrolling. Nuker Wolf says, it's a pink magical dagger of death. Nah, we don't need that. I mean, it's not that simple, but sometimes, yeah, it's like this was intended to be this kind of a cool item, and they're just, everyone wants the cloak for some reason, you know? Great. Stairs to the mines. In the middle of this otherwise featureless room is a spiral staircase with a 10-foot wide stone step descending into darkness, the topmost level of the Ironslag mines. The mines form a multi-level labyrinth of 20-foot diameter rough-hewn tunnels, just tall and wide enough for a fire giant to navigate. Spiked to the tunnel floors are rail tracks built for iron carts. To get from one mine level to the next, one must traverse a series of ramps or use the elevator that connects areas 9, 11, and 24. No map of the mine tunnels is provided. If the characters find themselves here, simply describe the maze of rough-hewn tunnels as having occasional upward and downward sloping passages. The upper levels of the mines are abandoned. The characters who explore that area find a few broken picks and shovels, plus the occasional empty cart resting on the tracks. As they make their way down, they begin to hear distant sounds of a mining operation, picks striking stone, and the sound of rocks being shoveled into metal carts. I was nervous about like all these levels that they don't explain, but I actually kind of think that's a pretty elegant way to do it, right? That there isn't anything of interest here until you start to get lower, right? 2 salamanders in the service of Zalto patrol the deepest level of the mine, watching over 11 shield dwarves and 17 rock gnomes, all commoners. The prisoners are split into groups of 2 and 3. Some use picks or shovels, while others push carts down ramps toward Area 17. All wear ankle shackles, reducing their speed to 25 from 25 feet to 5 feet. The shackle's keys are missing, but a lock can be picked with thieves' tools and a successful DC 10 dexterity check. So we're kind of back to the slaves thing again, right? I used like captives that were taken with the intent to turn them into thralls in the Frost Giant adventure, and it sort of left a bad taste in my mouth because I didn't like that the players just saw them as slaves. My intent was to say that they were captives, that if the party did not intervene, were going to be put to work. They did, but they still got referred to as slaves, and the term slave was used a bunch, and it just, don't care for it, bad time for it right now. So, my question is, it does make sense to me that the fire giants would outsource their labor to someone else. I don't mind if that relationship is sort of predatory, but the notion of just like, again, think about the way that they talk about the slaves in the Yak folk village. They're not even really given identities at all or personalities or anything, right? Whereas to say that like the Yak folk are keeping dwarven prisoners, a dwarven patrol that is held here, that's more narratively interesting anyway. So I'm wondering if we say, rather than them being dwarves and gnomes and just like randos that have been captured, what if there is another group of people that the fire giants have persuaded or bullied into working for them? They're not shackled, but maybe they've been like persuaded that this is in their own interest. Like I'm imagining the idea of like a goblin tribe, right, that lives down here and has been kind of like persuaded to do this. The party hasn't really interacted with goblins much, and so I like the idea, because like they're not going to be a big threat, right? Like, but I like the idea of that, of saying that like there were goblins who lived here, and now the fire giants came in and basically said like, hey, what if it's like back rent? It's like iron. Yeah, okay, here we go. Let me talk it out first. There was a goblin tribe that lived here. So Ironslag existed hundreds of years ago, right, or thousands of years ago, or whatever. And then with the fall of Hecaton, with the fall of Astoria, the giant empire, they were driven out by dwarves or whatever, right? Dwarves drove them out. The dwarves of Thronehold drove them out. So the giants left. Hecaton blows the horn, the giants return, right? And when they return, they find a tribe of goblins living in the depths of Ironslag. And the giants, rather than killing them or driving them away, see an opportunity. And they convince the goblins, hey, you have been staying in our home for hundreds of years or decades or whatever it is, right? You owe us this much gold. And the goblins are like, what? We don't have that. And the fire giants are like, okay, your choices are either to work it off or we kill you. And so the goblins are like, okay, it's like indentured servitude. It isn't slavery, exactly. Because again, then they have like an interest and they're characters and you can like delve into it. And it's a much more like nuanced relationship between these two people. Maybe the goblins have internalized the idea that if they work hard enough, they can pay off their thing. Every once in a while, the fire giants let a couple of goblins go, saying like, yeah, you did it. You know what I mean? You like worked off your debt. I think that's really fun because, again, then they can talk to the goblins and be like, they're never going to let you out of here. And the goblins can kind of be like, wait, what? And then they turn. If they're not like shackled, then the giants are expecting the goblins to just be idiots, right? And fall for this dupe. And then when the goblins realize they've been duped, the goblins are well positioned to like, revolt. Okay, that's my idea. I mean, I know it's kind of still the same notion, but again, rather than just saying like it's this dehumanized thing, it's a more political, nuanced relationship between these two people. Yes, it's exploitative, but they are the villains, right? And we're not necessarily using a lot of the imagery that we normally associate with like enslaved peoples. Great. A goblin tribe that dwelled in Ironslag before the return. I should stop talking while I type. Nuker Wolf says, they let Boogar is such a good name for a goblin. I'm sorry, I really like Boogar. They let Boogar go last week. I gotta write down Boogar. Boogar is, that's magical. Boogar! They let Boogar go last week, and I gave him my favorite rock shaped like a dog. They found goblin bones in a rock shaped like a dog previously. Amazing. That's so sad that they just kill him. I mean, like, I kind of think they do need to let them go legitimately, but there's something very dark. And I did, the idea entered my brain that it's like, did they just let them go and then kill them? Like, horrible. But I did. Boogar is such a good goblin. I don't know why that got me, Nuker Wolf. That's very good. Boogar. Okay. Dwarves and gnomes dare not try to escape what the salamanders are about. And you could do a lot of like corporate bullshit stuff where it's like, you know, the salamanders are like, oh, you've earned enough to get a pizza party. You know what I mean? Like you could have a couple of fun jokes with the weird corporate culture of like, but aren't you enslaving us? Right? Like, I think that's kind of fun. At the garrison dispose of the salamanders, the prisoners head to the Yakfolk village. They descend the 12,000 steps to the foot of the mountain. Before they flee, the prisoners tell the liberators that more slaves are being put to work, blah, 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 blah. The dwarves and gnomes are familiar with the areas. Cool. All that stuff. Weary of Fleagle. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Maybe... Yeah, I'll have to figure this out, because Zephyros obviously is a prisoner here, not a slave, I don't think. But he did have another academic with him, a gnome named Alistair Goggins, that is an expert on like old giant technology. So I feel like it's more of a they have conscripted Zephyros into helping them with the Voda node than it is they just have him thrown in a cell somewhere. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Elevator upper level. A ring-shaped gantry is bolted to the wall of the elevator shaft, 50 feet above the floor of the lower level. When the elevator stops here, the platform is level with the gantry. The circular space that the gantry surrounds is just wide enough for the platform to pass through it. Blah, blah, blah. Dressing mill. 8 orcs work here under the watch of a fire giant. The bucket chain moves from north to south through this room, the iron buckets dangling a few feet above the floor. As buckets of iron ore pass by, 2 orcs with hooked poles tip the buckets and dump their contents onto the floor. 2 more orcs place the ore atop stone slabs, and 2 more orcs pick out impurities. The last 2 orcs load the ore back into the buckets and shovel the impurities into piles. Once a weak production stops so that the impurities can be loaded into the buckets and transported back to areas. Who cares? A fire burns in the hearth in the middle of the east wall. The orcs are slaves, but fight alongside the fire giant. If the giant dies, the orcs can be persuaded to halt their attack and flee to the elevator by a character who makes a successful charisma check. The giant carries a 2-foot iron key that unlocks the iron trunk in Area 16B. Okay, so in Area 12, replace orcs with goblins. I retire in 1 week, so if I quit now, I won't get my pension. I just think there's a lot of funny jokes and stuff you could do with the, like, Zalto Core or whatever, you know? Like, you don't want to go that far, but I love the notion of these, like, punch clock goblins coming in and like, oh man, the rat race. And they're just clearly being exploited. Yeah, they're just like a little, they're friendly and they're, like, dumb, you know? I love that. I think that's very fun. And there's, like, you manager goblins and stuff coming around, right? Like, hey, TPS reports. The room to the south of the dressing mill contains a basalt table, a barrel of polluted water with iron pokers in it, a set of rusty manacles. Great! Prisoners who misbehave are hung up and tortured here. Cool! None are here now. Darn. I was hoping to see some more torture. 14, Assembly Hall, upper level. Wide iron gantries extend a short distance into a vast chamber. 2 lit braziers illuminate the western gantry, which has iron stairs leading down to the floor of Area 28. The steps are iron grills with holes large enough for a human fist to pass through. So specific. The steps provide 3/4 cover against any ranged attack that must pass through them to hit the target. The northern and eastern gantries are unlit. The ceiling is 40 feet above the gantries, the floor 50 feet below. The rattling of the bucket chain fills the room. 4 cable. It's just like, without looking at a map, this is just like word salad. Hanging in midair, held in place by chains bolted to the floor and ceiling, is the helmed head and upper torso of the Vodinode. So this is kind of the Vodinode chamber. Interesting. Cranes extending out from the western and eastern gantries have 2 other fragments of the Colossus hanging from them, an enormous greatsword and a giant gauntlet-like hand and forearm. These fragments are hanging at the same level as the gantries. They are too heavy for the characters to unhitch, but each crane has a winch that can be released, causing the fragment to fall to the floor with a crash. I think we heard it throughout Ironslag. If they haven't already been defeated or lured elsewhere, the creatures in Area 12 and 15 investigate the sound, arriving at the northern gantries, blah, blah, blah. Releasing the catch on a winch requires a knock spell. Interesting. Can also use an action to make a DC 15 strength athletics check. Well, let's say that. I don't know why it doesn't require a knock spell. You could just do it with a strength check. Any creature under the greatsword or gauntlet, when it falls, must succeed on a DC 15 dex saving throw. So this is a pretty simple change. Area 14... They can't have the helmet, but they can have the breastplate and the leg of the Vodinode in position. The arm is missing, held by Ildmane. Goblin HR. Yeah, this is just what I was saying. Astarock, but this is what I mean, right? Like, I just think there's some funny jokes to be had if it's very corporate. And you might say it's more interesting than just blank slavery. Okay. The wall of liberation, iron portcullis, blah, blah, blah. Characters move quietly up and onto the gantry without being seen or heard by Duke Zalto and his hellhounds. So 28's below. This is the gantry area. Okay, cool. 15, Mustering Hall. The walls of this room bear frescoes that depict fire giants forging armor and weapons. That's cool. Marching to war and binding red dragons in chains. That's pretty cool. 4 basalt pillars support the 40-foot high ceiling, and iron chandeliers bereft of candles hang above a pair of basalt tables. A fireplace in the north wall provides the only warmth and light. Unless trouble has been detected inside the forge, 3 ogres stand around the northernmost table where 2 fire giants are locked in an arm wrestling contest. That's fun. The ogres are cheering on the giants and paying close attention to the contest. Yeah, so it's cool. It's one of those like tableaus in a movie where the characters are sneaking through the palace, right? And they see, oh, the guards are gambling or they're, drinking and laughing, so we can sneak past them. Like, yeah, I love that. That's great. I love the scene that creates. But then they can investigate any loud disturbance in Area 14, sure. They're kind of like the on reserve. Got it. That's cool. I like that. Unchanged. 16, Giant's Quarters. A long, dark hallway has 3 doors set into it. The rooms to the north, the living spaces of Duke Zalto's slave overseers. And the larger room to the south serves as a quarter for the general fire giant population. No giants here now. Iron-framed bed, cabinet filled with manacles and instruments of torture. Great. A large cask of dwarven ale, a barrel of fresh water, and a wooden trunk bound in iron and fitted with an iron padlock. It's 9 feet tall, 12 feet long, 8 feet wide, and weighs 750 pounds. Wooden poles stacked against the wall can be slipped through iron rings on the sides of the chest. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, this feels like a good place for a magic item as well. Localis 16, Giants Quarters. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, hey, I don't want to be that goblin, but now that I'm the assistant to the manager's junior secretary, just want to say your bathroom break is only a 5-minute break, and I saw you took 6 minutes, and that looks bad on all of us. It reflects poorly on, on level 12. Yeah, this is all gold. This is amazing. Ore Depository. Characters who descend through the mines eventually end up here, emerging through one of 2 tunnels in the north wall. Rail tracks running through these tunnels end at a pair of wooden barriers. 3 pillars of black basalt support the ceiling. The bucket chain passes through gaps in the western and eastern walls, its iron buckets dangling a few inches above the floor. A tunnel leading west connects to an iron gantry that overlooks the foundry. A salamander stands guard in the middle of the room, watching over 4 shield dwarf slaves. Ugh. The dwarves have ankle manacles that reduce their speed from 25 feet to 5 feet. No. This, again, goblins. 17. Replace dwarves with goblins. Transfer to the bucket chain. Empty wooden barrels and crates are piled in, or blah, 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 blah. The dwarves are imprisoned in the slave pens. Jesus Christ. Characters to the slave wheel and the slave pens. In hopes of freeing the human, dwarf, and gnome prisoners. I like that they say that they don't want to free the orc prisoners. Oh no, just the human, dwarf, and gnome prisoners. Great. A few minutes after the slaves in this room stop working, other creatures along the bucket chain begin receiving empty buckets. The empty buckets don't immediately cause concern, for shift changes and work breaks are known to happen. But if 15 minutes pass and no ore arrives, Zoltemper and the ogres in Area 18 investigate, entering from the west. Yeah, I mean, that still works, right? Like, if they distract the goblins long enough or convince the goblins, yeah, that still is fine. Foundry. This area is incredibly hot. Fucking tell me about it. And characters who linger here are susceptible to the effects of extreme heat. Fucking tell me about it. A rusted iron gantry clings to the north, west, and south walls, 50 feet above the floor of the main foundry, which echoes with the sound of clanging metal, rattling chains, whooshing bellows, and bubbling molten iron. Unless they have been drawn to Area 17, 4 ogres armed with 15-foot-long hooked poles stand on the gantry above the smelters. They use the poles to tip buckets of iron ore into the smelters. Overseeing them is Duke Zalto's fat and lazy son, Zaltember. When the characters first arrive, Zaltember is dangling a shield dwarf commoner by his ankles over the southernmost smelter and threatening to drop him into it unless the dwarf pleads for his life. Okay, so I like that introduction. It doesn't make sense to be a goblin, and I think we've seen enough goblins. Zaltember is dangling Alistair Goggins over the smelter and demanding he tell him how to remove the arm of the Vodanode from Ildmane. Refuses to give us this again for a giant any satisfaction. Is 15. I love that he's 15. He's 15 and stands 9 feet tall. That's great. So he's shorter than the other giants. That's fun. I love that, because he's a kid. He's a bully. I mean, like, I thought he was his son, but I assumed he was like, you know, like a teenage son. Oh, he is, but like an adult son, like a Trump son. You know what I mean? That he was like an adult, but not really. Is a bully and a coward. If wounded, he flees to Area 31 to be with his mother. If he is captured or cornered, he declares that he is the son of Duke Zalto, hoping to cow his captors into letting him go. Yeah, okay, that's fun. I like Zaltemper. That's an interesting character. Oh, we have some development. If battle erupts here, the 4 fire giants working in the foundry below begin hurling globs of molten iron at enemies they can see. If the characters take Zaltemper prisoner, they can use him as leverage when dealing with either of his parents. Duke Zalto and Duchess Brimskarda don't want any harm to befall their son and will accede to any reasonable demand to have him released. The Duchess speaks for her husband in all respects if she's the one the characters negotiate with. Before conceding to any demands, the Duke and the Duchess try to convince Zaltemper's captors to release him as a show of good faith. This is a trick. The Duke and Duchess will freely renege on their promises if they have nothing to lose. The characters refuse to release Zaltemper until they have obtained Duke Zalto's conch. Gives them in exchange for the promise of his safe return. Allows the characters to leave Ironslag with the conch and whether other treasure has been amassed, provided the characters agree to release Zaltemper once they have made their escape. If Zalto has Megara in his custody, the characters can demand that he surrender the Fire Primordial. This he won't do, for the loss of Megara would thwart his plans to rise to the top of the Ordning. If he must choose between his son and his destiny, Zalto chooses the latter. Not even his wife can convince him otherwise. That's interesting. So here's the issue, is that we don't have Brimskarda, because I don't like the idea of him having a nagging wife, and I think that you could make that a little bit more interesting. I like Duke Zalto as a character more than I like Brimskarda as his nagging wife. So I wonder if we do a thing where we basically do a palette swap with Ildmane and Brimskarda. where the conceit is that Ildmain was married to Oskurt, this other giant that they killed very early in the campaign, and she has since come back, and she has one of the arms of the Vodinode, and she refuses to give it to Zolto, saying, you know, I will be the one who wears it, who wears the suit, but you have to assemble it for me, and then I will wreak, you know, my devastation. And Zolto can't take it from her because she's too powerful with it, and she shoots down, like, she's the one who shot down Zephyros, so she has all this leverage, right? So I like the idea that Zolto is maybe thinking about, like, marrying her, right? Trying to get in that way, and that is causing, like, tension with Zoltember and Cinderhild. We'll have to see what the character's like, but I could see, like, bratty 15-year-old, like, you're not my real mom kind of stuff. Ildmain doesn't want anything to do with Duke Zolto in a marriage sense, but sees him as, you know, useful to getting the pieces. I think that's interesting because it's a character that they know already, rather than, like, having to meet somebody new, and it's a slightly different dynamic here. So I'm going to put that note in as well. Let me check chat first. Mom, the little people picked on me. Yeah, exactly. Adorable idiots doing bureaucracy wrong or badly, not realizing it's just slavery with extra steps. Yeah, I think there's something very fun. I think we really hit on something cool here. And again, if they had replaced it, that's still evil of the fire giants. Right? The fire giants are still clearly the bad guys here. And you could argue that it really isn't that different than them being, like, you know, taskmasters and slavers. But it has a different tone that isn't going to trigger anybody who doesn't want to deal with that kind of stuff. Right, or has less chance to do that, and it's more fun, and it's more complex, right? It just feels like saying they captured these people and imprisoned them, and it's slave pens and slave wheels and slave this and slave that, is just lazy, but also kind of dangerous, narratively speaking. I don't know. It's a game, we're here to have fun. Okay, let me write this idea down. Ildmain. There's something fun about Brimskarda, like, that they're divorced. It's not that Brimskarda is dead, it's that they're separated, that she's off somewhere else, and, like, Duke Zolto has custody of the kids, right? Or it's, like, his weekend. That's funny, that, like, normally they go stay with Brimskarda, but, you know, he got joint custody or something like that. That's very funny. Mainly to get access to the arm of the Vodinode that she has. New Grove says, random idea, glasses wearing goblin based on Dwight from The Office. Yeah, that's, like, obligatory. I was trying to think of what's the Bears Beats Battlestar Galactica joke for goblins, but I'm not sure what it is. Okay, let's keep going. Ooh, my favorite room, the slave wheel. So stairs go down, stairs are stairs. The slave wheel. A fireplace in the middle of the north wall keeps this area warm and lit. An enormous wheel made from iron gears and wooden spokes dominates the room, so it's a capstan. The wheel is rigged to the bucket chain that travels through the forge. Turning the great wheel are 10 shield dwarfs and 10 humans with iron manacles around their ankles. These slaves all suffer from 4 levels of exhaustion. Every hour spent turning the wheel increases their level of exhaustion by 1. Again, they're also just, like, bad at keeping slaves. It's like, if you want these people to work, you're gonna have to treat them better. Like, I don't understand this, like, work them until they die mentality. Like, it's needlessly cruel. On top, and I mean, A, it's fictional, you don't need it, and then B, like, why are you especially cruel to the fictional slaves? Like, ugh. Not that it really makes a difference if you treated them better, but it's still just stupid and ahistorical. Watching over the slaves are 2 ogres clad head to toe in spiked iron armor. They collapse, and the ogres bellow for the goblins to bring replacement slaves, drag the exhausted slaves back to their cells to rest. Okay, so they do cycle them, but still. So I think we do the slave wheel as, like, a shift that the goblins take on, rather than a slave wheel. The goblins have wheel duty. potentially as a punishment for laziness or slacking off. If they do well at the wheel, they get some superficial reward, like a pizza party. Okay. So yeah, this is the thing where if the wheel stops turning, the bucket chains stop, the entire forge falls quiet, and they all converge on the room to find out what happened. So this is the one that makes all the noise. Okay. I'm gonna scroll. Overseer's office. Fireplace heats and illuminates his chamber. Obsidian mugs has a fire giant rests on a basalt table. Marble shelves on the north and south walls stand bare. Iron doors on the western and southern walls. Storage rooms. Fire giant is tasked with herding and feeding the prisoners. This is the boss, right? Yeah, I think that's funny if it's like the CEO. Or the manager, right? The assistant to the manager. Hellhound pen. An iron portcullis blocks the tunnel leading to this room. Gnawed, blackened humanoid bones lie strewn about the chamber. 7 hellhounds howl and growl from within 2 spacious iron cages. Yeah, fine. Slave pens. Iron portcullises seal off this long, foul-smelling hall. 3 basalt pillars support the ceiling. Smaller, medium character outside the cage. So, I don't understand. They have hobgoblins that work for them, right, as like guards. Where do the hobgoblins come from? They like imprison orcs as slaves, but then they have hobgoblins working for them. Why do these hobgoblins get a good deal? Is there mercenaries? There's no explanation for what these hobgoblins fucking are. What? Okay, so only 4 of the cages are occupied. 5 shield dwarves, 7 rock gnomes, 3 humans, and 6 orcs. Only the orcs wear armor and carry weapons, and they attack anyone who frees them that isn't a fire giant. Why would the orcs still have their weapons? The non-orc prisoners wear manacles on their ankles. The manacles must be broken or picked. Searchers the liberators want nothing more than to escape the fire giant's stronghold. They're particularly afraid of Duke Zalto's son. Ugh. Oh, no. This could be where Zephyros is like... I don't mind them having, like, prisoners. Among the prisoners are a few barbarians, some goblins, potentially Zephyros. Hunter says... You can make them like the Halot class from ancient Sparta, which definitely still has some kind of negative connotations, but it's a little different. Like, I don't mind that idea of, like, saying that, you know... I think that's the thing, is that, like, there are lots of examples of, like, historical slaves that have entirely different connotations than the sort of chattel slavery that we come to associate with the Atlantic slave trade. But, like, if any of that causes anybody at your table harm or makes them uncomfortable, there's no need for it. That's the thing that, like, bothers me. It's like, it's not that you can't find examples of slavery in history that aren't exactly the same as the kind of original sin one in America, but like, why? What does that really do when you can do something else, you know? So like, I agree, like Roman slavery, for example, was a completely different thing because it was all these prisoners of war, right? It wasn't this like economic engine for them. Like, definitely there was an industry around it, but it didn't have the same kind of dehumanizing narrative, right? That like they could buy their way out. There was a bunch of different things. Like the rules just worked differently. And yeah, like, there's all kinds of like castes or different social classes in the history of the world that are or even like serfs in medieval Europe are like functionally slaves with more autonomy, right? But like, again, why? Like, why do this? Why put these things in your game if they're just gonna cause harm? I don't understand. Like, if you do that in your private game at home, right? Like, yeah, and Hunter, I know, you and I talk, you agree. I'm not here to say that you're advocating for that, but like, that's the thing I don't get, is it's like, if you do that in your home game and everyone's okay with it, great. I mean, that's a little weird to me, but like, cool. No one's gonna stop you. But it's when Wizards like bakes this shit into their public products that I don't understand. Like, I wasn't planning on talking about the Hadesy, but again, it's like, I don't understand why this has to constantly be the narrative that we go with. Do you know what I'm saying? There are so many other stories that are more interesting, and we keep going back. Like the Gith and the Durgar and the Hadazee and like the Fire Giants as slavers, the Neogi, the Mind Flayers. It's like, why are we constantly telling this story? God. Anyway, sorry, rant. I wasn't expecting to find all of this in here today, and it's been top of mind. Like, not just for me, but I think for a lot of people. And it's just like, why? Why is this so prevalent? If it's like, okay, we're gonna do it here or there in like small amounts, it doesn't bother me as much, especially if it's got more subtlety, like you're saying with the Spartans. But they're not. It's just, ugh. Okay, we're moving on. Moving on. Sorry to rant. Whoa, there's goblins! 25, Feasting Hall. 30 goblins are in the midst of cleaning the Feasting Hall when the characters first arrive. Fearing the wrath of Duchess Brimskarda, they frantically tidy up giant-sized plates and mugs while fighting over table scraps. If the goblins are attacked, they flee west through the hallway and beat on the doors of Area 31 until they are let inside. If the western tunnel is blocked off, iron braziers and alcoves dimly illuminate the hall. Pillars and basalt partition walls support the 50-foot-high vaulted ceiling, from which hang heavy iron chandeliers, their candles draped in cobwebs. The chains used to raise and lower the chandeliers are fastened to iron hooks mounted on the walls. Set into the north wall is a fireplace, and arranged about the room are basalt tables covered with bronze dishware. An iron spit is mounted above a fire pit fueled by natural gas. Any goblin that is captured and interrogated claims to be in service of Duke Zalto and Duchess Brimskarda. They're familiar with the layout of the Fire Giant stronghold and can be bullied into acting as guides or providing directions. Goblin captives always act in their own self-interest, and goblins forced to serve the characters are quick to betray them when the characters no longer have the upper hand, of course, because they're goblins. But I actually think that works, because they just work for... I think that plays into it. I didn't realize there were goblins in here. That's perfect. We got another map here. I'm going to scroll down, look at it. Okay, so yeah, you can definitely see the doors there. It's funny, they lead directly onto the chamber with the Voda node in it. That's very interesting. Okay. David says, so many other evil acts in slavery. For sure. Ooh, interesting. Hunter says, I had a class about ethics in video game design, and there are some crazy topics about what acts are actually the most evil. Interesting. Yeah, we should get into some... That's an interesting idea. It was definitely an uncomfortable class. That sounds very uncomfortable. But, you know, I mean, not necessarily bad. An ethics class. That's cool. I'm interested in that. Yeah, David, I agree. So many other evil acts than just slavery. And it's like... It starts to feel like a pattern. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you look at somebody's, like, search history, and they're, like, constantly searching the same thing, if they're like bees, sexy bees in lingerie, it's like, hey man, do you have like a bee thing? Like, no, what do you mean? It's like, well, if you're constantly putting slavery in all of your books, do you got like a slave thing? Like, what's going on? Like, it's fine, I guess, in like tiny amounts and in certain circumstances, but it just starts to look weird and fetishistic. Cool, this Ironslag map is sick. I'm into it. I'll have to do that thing if I use it where I have to explain to the players, like, okay, it looks like this, but actually blah, 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 because they're gonna be like, he doesn't have the helmet yet. I'm like, disregard the actual image of it. That's just what it appears as. Ooh, 26, Ducal Quarters. There's another good place for a magic item, I feel. We scroll down. We have 15 minutes. Do you think we'll make it through? I don't know. Okay, Duke Zalto and Duchess Brimskarda sleep here in an enormous bed with a frame made from crisscrossing iron sword blades welded together. That's pretty fucking cool. Dangling above the bed are large chains and manacles, the purpose of which is known only to the Duke and the Duchess. Whoa! Oh no! See, this I like. This is much better. They're into some weird shit. I love that. I'm not going to put that in the adventure because it will engender some strange questions from my players, from my 12-year-old players, but they're freaky. Duke Zalto and Duchess Brimskarda. Love that. A shield made from a black dragon scale is displayed on the north wall behind the bed. Iron chandelier hangs from the ceiling over the center of the room near the foot of the bed. A chain connected to the chandelier is snagged on an iron hook. Blah, blah, blah. 2 wardrobes of fire-scorched wood. A giant barrel in the south corner is a stool. Full-length mirror mounted on the south corner. Wardrobe made from a red dragon scaly hide. That's cool. Necklace of engraved gold plates draped over its shoulders. Duchess's wardrobe contains a gown made with gold ingots and rings. Yeah, it's a lot of treasure. Okay. Great location for magic item as well. It's a little similar to the other one, so we could always change or move one of these, but this is 26. Ducal quarters. Ah, come on. Ooh, the chest is a trap. If the chest is opened without using the combination, the act releases a cloud of incendiary gas that ignites on contact with the air and fills a 20-foot radius sphere centered on the chest. Any creature in the area must succeed on a DC 15 dex save. 10d8 fire! Woo! Trap can't be disabled from the outside of the chest and is triggered only once. Inside the chest, resting on a bed of ashes, a giant-sized adamantine crown. That's boss. Fuck yeah. Okay, cool. Let's check the chat. There are some BDSM wizards. Yeah. Also, is there any NPC from the player's history that has found their way here and has like a happy life as a middle manager who is the current employee of the month? That is very funny to me. Well, it's not slavery if she consents. Yikes. But yes, consent is very important. Boy, I don't know if there's anyone that would make sense to be here, because like the conceit of like is that the goblins owe the money, right? Boy, who's a good one for that? That's a funny idea. I don't hate that. I'm just trying to think who fits. There is like a super evil wizard on the loose, but he would never like consent to work with these fools, right? He would lord over them. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta figure out what to do. They like unfroze a Netherese wizard the last adventure. And then he got the Ring of Winter and disappeared with it. And I feel like I have to have some sort of climate apocalypse descend on them now because he's out there. God, I'll think about that, David. It's a cool idea. I like the idea of like, what? What are you doing here? Like, I'm actually really happy. This is great. Okay, South Bedchamber has Cinderhild in it. Interesting, she feels like a prisoner in Ironslag. She wants to explore the world. Her father is described as a boundless realm full of wonders, but her parents refuse to let her leave, and she's furious at them. I kind of like this. Oh, big boned. She wields a great club and has statistics of an ogre. She's 11 feet tall and she's 18. Yeah, that's an interesting point because they've not met any sympathetic fire giants yet, and it's something I always try to do whenever they meet giants, right? That like most of the time in this campaign they are opposed to them. I guess they haven't met any sympathetic hill giants yet, but they've met some sympathetic stone giants and they've been friends with the Harshnag for a long time. Zephyros is an ally of theirs. I think having at least one. Yeah, this is good. I'm glad they put this in here. I like the idea of her maybe being difficult, but not necessarily being sinister. So Cinderhild is potentially an ally. But still very much a teenage girl. That's like a player type we've not met yet. Or a character type we've not met yet. Like, I think they could have some fun with her being sort of bratty. Yeah, the impertinence and mood swings of a spoiled princess. I think that's fun to play with. And she's huge. She's 11 feet tall. He tells them that her father spends some time with the Dragon Slayer. Likes to oversee activity in the kitchen. It might... Hold on, let me scroll. It might occur to the characters that they could benefit from capturing Cinderhild and then ransoming her back to her parents. In order to surrender, she tells the character she's willing to pretend to be their prisoner until her father gives them what they want. If they accept her counter-proposal, she allows them to dispose of her handmaids before surrendering, on the condition that they keep her as a prisoner until they have escaped Ironslag. Once she is far enough away from her parents, Cinderhild demands to be released, vowing never to trouble the characters again, a promise she aims to keep. She gives them her fire opal pendant sea treasure, which was a gift from her parents, to seal the bargain. That's great! Yeah. See, that's good. That's fun. I'm into that. Potential magic item. A gift from Cinderhild. Yeah, love it. Cool. Sorry for all the scrolling. War room. We got 10 minutes. Ooh. I don't know how much we have left. I'm going to be really bad and do a fast scroll. This is going to fuck up my thing, but I just want to see if we're close to the end. No. No, we probably don't have time to finish this shoot. So I gotta be done at 4. Let's get as far as we can. Basalt table, blue marble, bare marble shelves, an iron golem. Shit. Fire. The golem is activated, incapacitated. Activating the iron golem requires one to speak the proper word. Not even Duke Zolto knows it. Oh, interesting. Interesting. I think that's really fun. Ild Strike. Interesting. Yeah, I love that. Cool. So they can like take control of it. I would worry this would make them very, very powerful. But I think that's fine because once it's magically programmed to shut down after 1 hour. Once it shuts down, the golem can't be reactivated for 1 hour. So they have to like wait an hour every time they want to go anywhere. Okay, pools of light huddle around lit braziers and niches in the walls. Okay, the Vonindod. Again, Vodinode is how we've pronounced it in the campaign. That's what we're calling it. Suspended and steadied by huge chains near the middle of the room are the helmed head and upper torso of the Vodinode, which have survived more or less intact. The adamantine colossus will stand 80 feet tall once it is fully assembled. Until then, it is nothing more than a dangling, lifeless hulk. One of its eyes is a giant ruby set into it. The other eye contains a socket for a similarly sized but missing gemstone. Climbing the Colossus to reach the ruby eye requires a DC 20 strength check. Since service has few handholds or footholds, prying the ruby eye from its socket requires a crowbar, a sword blade, or similar tool. Okay, so that should probably change because the helmet isn't there, but maybe it's got a gem in the, like, chest plate. This is 28. Adamantine doors. Set into the southeast wall is a pair of 50-foot tall adamantine doors sealed by ancient magic. The doors are airtight and soundproof. They open only when a fire giant standing 50 feet of them speaks in giant. By Surtur's flame, I command these doors to open. By Surtur's flame, I command these doors to close. Knock spells and similar magic have no effect on these doors. Though a legend lore spell or similar magic reveals how the doors can be opened and closed. A clever character can fool the magic on the doors by creating an illusory fire giant and having it speak the passphrase. That's cool. Characters that can also try to hide and wait for a fire giant to open the doors. Yeah, that's fun. I like that. Duke Zolto is here, playing with his two favorite hellhounds, Narthor and Zarabor. Narthor and Zarabor! Zolto has a hollow iron ball, 4 feet across, riddled with holes and containing the roasted corpses of a rock gnome. Jesus. I actually think that's kind of cool. He rolls the ball across the floor. The hounds chase after it, fight over it, blast it with their fiery breath, and otherwise knock it around, much to Zolto's delight. Yeah, cool. The rectangular head of Zolto's iron maul contains a hollow cell just large enough to confine a medium creature. One wall of the cell is... Oh, that's right! This is so cool! One wall of the cell is filled with a door made of vertical iron bars. The cell door has a built-in lock, and Zolto carries the only key. Wrenching open the door requires a 6... blah, 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 blah. Has imprisoned a shield dwarf inside the hammer. Each time Zolto hits something with a weapon, any creature inside takes 2d4 bludgeoning damage as it's jostled and knocked about. That's awesome. The prisoner is a member of the Zentarum named Jasper Dimmerchasm. Jasper tries to negotiate with one of Zolto's underlings, brought to Ironslag to meet with the Duke. So, can't be that, but it can maybe be our Dwarven spy. Ooh, maybe that's it. Maybe it's that, like, Zolto has bribed... Yeah, Zolto captured... Okay. Zolto... Here, let me write it out first. Okay. So we were talking about the dwarves, or the drow, actually being dwarven, like, traders inside Thronehold, right? The dwarven, like, kingdom. What if Zalto, like, the reason they're doing that is because Zalto has imprisoned the prince or, you know, someone important inside, like, some important member of the dwarven community inside the Hammer, and is demanding somebody, possibly even the king or the queen of True Throne. Nope, not True Throne. That's mine. Thronehold, to surrender Megara to him in exchange for the prisoner's life. Right? So then this, like, betrayal from inside the dwarves is actually kind of compelled by Zalto. That's cool. I like that. We can even call him Jasper Dimmerchasm if we want. Whatever. Cool. While he's locked inside Zalto's Maul, he can't attack anything. Blah, blah, blah. He asks the characters to remain until they return to civilization. Okay, we got 4 minutes. I might stop there, because that feels like a good place. There's a few of these left I can do on my own, but I think that gives us a good sense of the couple of changes. I gotta find a place to put Ildmane. I gotta figure out what Sephiroth is up to in here. I like Elister being dangled over the smelter by Zaltembra. That's cool. I think Cinderhild is cool. Obviously, we got to rework. I love the goblins that we added. That's probably my favorite thing. But we got to rework the barbarians as well. So there's a lot to change here. But I think going through and understanding what's presented gives me a better opportunity. But there's also lots of cool stuff. Like, I mean, I think the guy imprisoned in the Maul of the Hammer is pretty boss. I think Cinderhild is a really good character. I think the whole concept of, like, this clattering droid factory kind of a sequence, I think, is going to be really fun, and I like that. Like, as much as I'm giving them shit, and I think rightfully so for their obsession with these slaves, I think this is going to prove to be a fun dungeon once I have scraped out a lot of the boring or offensive material, which maybe indicates that I shouldn't have to fucking do that, is what I'll say. Great. But that is all the time we have today. It's Boogar. He wasn't really dead. You got to keep Boogar alive. I will say Boogar was maybe the highlight of the session, of this stream for me. Thank you, everyone, for your patience in putting up with my bad tech today. Hopefully, when I stream next week, it is supposed to cool off substantially next week, so it won't be quite so bad. But thanks to everyone for coming out. Thanks to David and Hunter and Nuker Wolf, Brent. I think M. Grant popped in for a bit. Oh, no, it was Grant. I have somebody named M. Grant that's a patron, and someone named Grant who used to be a patron, and I constantly get them confused. Thanks to everybody who popped in and helped brainstorm some ideas. I am back from my little hiatus. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Discord. You can find me on Patreon, and obviously here on YouTube. If you've not liked the video already, please consider giving it a like. Please consider subscribing if you're not subscribed. I think most of you who are here are probably subscribed already, but if not, click that button, click the little bell. That way you get notified when we go live in the future. But until then, thank you so much for hanging out and watching and brainstorming with me. But until next time, happy adventuring.